Hey, what's going on everybody? Red Ronald Music here, bringing you another video. Today I want to do a video on some tips on how to get better at online racing. Obviously I'm not saying I'm some kind of expert, because I'm not. I just want to make that clear. But these are some tips that I thought of that I feel would help any beginner get started in sim racing online. And these are also tips that I wish I knew before I started racing. And I'm speaking from the point of view of somebody who plays Project Cars 2, though most of these will help in any sim racer. And I'm also speaking from the point of view as somebody with a wheel setup. It's ideal just to have a wheel and some pedals for a sim racing game. You could get by with a controller, but it will just be a little harder. The first section, we're going to split this into 5 sections. Well, technically 4. The first would be learning the tracks. It's important to take the time to get familiar with each track and each ribbon or layout. Obviously, it's going to take some time, but once you get familiar with each track in sim racing, that knowledge will last you forever because most tracks are duplicated in each game. First off, you're going to want to learn the turns so you're not guessing where you're going, and so you know what to expect in the less visible turns or just turns in general. You'll know how shallow it is on the other side, or where you're going to land if you go through it, and like how you go through it. You'll also want to get a feel for the best spots to make passes. This will usually be in a longer straight or a decently wide turn, just because you want to have some room in case you either have to back out or you have to fully commit. And those weird dark paths on tracks actually mean something. You've probably seen them on like Daytona or something like that. They actually kind of mean something. They can either identify a turn, the fastest line, a braking point, or all 3 of those things. Daytona, for example, will have darker sections low in the turns and start to rise up in the straights and then disappear for a bit, but then come back low in the turns. This identifies one of the better routes throughout the turns and where you'll usually want to start to turn in. It's kind of rare to see these in the straights though, just because tires don't really wear too much in the straights, and those lines are actually just rubber from the tires. These lines in the games are usually, at least not in Project Cars, are not affected by real people in your race. They're just there as artwork, but they will actually signify something a little bit and help you out a little bit. They're not going to tell you everything, and sometimes they may be off just because it is art, but it should give you some sort of hint. You're also going to want to find reference points. Things like cones on the track in like a certain spot, or the start of a rumble strip in a certain turn, will help you come up with the best places to begin braking or turning, or just remember where you are on the track. Most tracks will have some sort of signs that tell you your distance from a turn. These things are your best friends. I know for me, I feel comfortable braking in a Huracan GT3 at about 150-ish meters out from the turn in Monza, the first turn. This may be a bit early for some of you, but I feel like it's what I'm most comfortable with, and it will guarantee me that I will make it through the turn. And this will also take us into the braking zone section. Learn braking zones. It's pretty important so you're not dive bombing into people's ass while you're in a race, or like just missing the turn completely. This depends on the type of car you're driving. If you're in like a GT3 car, you may need a bit more room than if you're in like a World Touring car or a Ginetta Junior or something slower like that. And speaking of cars, that brings us to section 2, finding your cars. I found that using the same cars not only helped me to learn tracks, but to also perform better online, just because you're familiar with it. If you can learn the characteristics of a certain car, you'll know how it will react to certain things, such as like a bump from another driver, late braking if you missed something, like a reference point and you have to brake late, or if it oversteers, understeers, when to apply gas, when to not, or when to just start braking to get the perfect corner. For example, a Porsche GT3 car will most likely understeer going into turns just because of the way it's set up, but it will also be flat coming out just because of the characteristics it has as a car. You'll want to learn cars that are in classes that are commonly raced online, so I suggest something in GT3, something in touring cars, GT5s, which are mostly just Ginettas and Project Cars. I think that's the only car actually. And GTE, and sometimes you'll get a Group A lobby, and those are really fun, but they're a bit rare. at least on Xbox. For me in GT3, I prefer the Huracan. I just like how it drives. I feel like I can push it to the limit and be perfectly fine. In GTE, it's the Ford GT. In touring cars, it's the Renault. And in Group A, I like both the M3 and the 190E because they're pretty similar cars. But you have to keep in mind not to limit yourself to one car completely. Once you're comfortable with one and have pretty much mastered it, which doesn't really take that long, move on to a new one, keep learning and keep practicing, and that brings us to part 3. Practice. I was a bit of a fool and spent all of my time practicing in private testing area things of project cars. In the end, this was kind of a big waste of time and didn't help me at all, besides learning the tracks. Private testing is basically for creating tunes or maybe learning the tracks. I don't even know if it's there for that. The reason I say maybe is because the best way to learn a track is to also learn how people handle them. Make sure your practice is actually useful. You want to practice an actual race, not just driving around, because if you're going to be racing, you obviously want to practice racing. Like if you're going to play basketball, you're not going to practice golf. You want to do actual races, whether it's with bots or in a low-rank lobby online, or even an unranked lobby, which is probably better. You can get as fast as possible on any track, but that's not going to get you anywhere if somebody's blocking you in a turn and you don't know how to get around them. If you find yourself being pressured by a driver behind you, like flashing their lights or trying to distract you, or you just get nervous with somebody riding in your blind spot and you don't know where they're at, the only way to get past that really is by experiencing it a bunch of times and just getting used to it and knowing how to handle that situation. So just keep practicing that stuff. Just do races over and over and over until you get it. Just make sure it's in unranked or low ranks, because yeah. Tips for an actual race. If you're just starting out, I suggest skipping the qualifier or just not pushing the lap times too high until you're really comfortable with your abilities, because starting in the back will allow you to follow and learn other people's strategies for racing, or just follow their driving line to know the best way around. And you can tweak that to fit your needs, but usually that will be the fastest way if everybody's doing it. It also allows you to miss the disastrous pileup that's pretty much guaranteed to happen in the first turns of the race. And you can also snag some free positions and help you get some points to rank up to join more lobbies online. At least in Project Cars 2, that's how the ranking system works. Similar to learning all of the cars, you want to understand how certain cars drive. The Renault Megane in touring cars is a front-wheel drive car, and it's going to understeer a bit more than the BMW 3 Series. It's also in the touring cars. The BMW is most likely to oversteer, while the Renault is most likely to understeer, just because one's front-wheel drive and one's rear-wheel drive. These cars don't really complement each other in a race, because one car is probably going to be faster into a turn than coming out of it, and the other will be the opposite. It helps to understand this so you know when to perform a meaningful overtake, or to avoid causing the Beamer to oversteer, or to avoid barreling into the ass of the Renault. Defensive driving is key. You always want to know what's going on up ahead of you, and even a few cars ahead of that. Give yourself an exit. You want to learn to recognize when things are going to turn sour. For example, if you see a bit of tire smoke coming from a car that's duking it out too wide in a turn, you know that that guy is probably going to get sideways, or maybe is a little bit wobbly. The driver could save it and everything could be sunshine and roses, or the driver could spin and bump into the next driver and cause a two-car crash, sending a wall of car into your path. Also, if a vehicle is spinning out of control towards a wall that's close to the edge of the track, that car could always just bounce off that wall back onto the road into your face, so you want to look out for stuff like that too. My point is that once you do enough races and see certain hints of these events, you can better learn how to avoid them and stay safe and gain some more positions for free. Don't be a douche. Just as much as you want to avoid crashes that are already occurring, you want to avoid starting one. Best way is to not go too hard all the time or be too aggressive. It's better to take your time without going too slow than to rush hard through corners after you see an opponent in your mirrors. Don't try to box people off the track or into objects, because if you make them crash, chances are they'll take you down with them. People don't like that. Either they'll crash into you again by accident, or they'll kill you. Be friendly and don't start beef with others too. When you inevitably crash, because everyone does it once in a while, if you take out another driver, allow them to take their position back and show that you're owning up to your mistake. Don't just try to like dive back onto the road and leave them in the dust, because it's kind of douchey. That could also get you kicked out of lobbies. It is okay to get a little more aggressive at the end of a race, just because you don't want to like give it up if you're that close to passing somebody. But just don't screw yourself over and make a mistake trying to overtake in some crazy way. Also, use tools like your headlights to show that you're pulling back on the track, or to show that you're going for a pass or on a slow car. Everyone will usually figure out that you're trying to tell them something, so usually people just flicker their lights on and off a bunch of times or something. They're trying to get your attention. But mainly, you just want to keep grinding. Eventually, once you get all these things down, you'll be an ace in the online of the majority of racing games, because these things do apply to all of them. You may not win every race or even one race for a while, but practice makes perfect as long as it's meaningful practice. Anyways, guys, hopefully some of these tips helped you out. I just wanted to do like a couple things just because I've been observing my own play style and what I do online. Because I haven't been doing online on Project Cars for too long. I've had the game since it came out, but I only started doing actual online lobbies maybe a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and I'm already decently highly ranked. These are just some tips that I've gathered either from playing this game recently or just from racing games over the years like Forza or whatever, and hopefully they help you out. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button below. Comment, let me know if you agree with my tips, or if you have any other tips for anybody, put those down below. That'd be great. And if you guys could, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button below so you could get notifications from when I upload new content. Anyways, guys, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. See y'all next time. Peace.